Well, hello, everybody. Good morning, community. Well, this morning, we're at South Africa and also South Africa is here. And Son, thank you for being on there. Appreciate it. So this evening in South Africa, and Jan Brittle is on the house. Thank you, Jan, for being out there. Today, community, I have an incredible show for you today. Something I really looking forward to. We're going to be talking to a man that went through a stroke in a different way. You always hear me talk about the ripple effect of stroke. I am stroke survivor, but the ripple effect of stroke goes far and wide, impacts the entire family. My wife, she's a top stroke survivor. This man you're about to meet, named John Largent, he's a top stroke survivor. He didn't actually have a stroke, but he was part of the ripple effect of stroke. He was the son of a stroke survivor. So I want to bring him online and really get his thoughts to say something we have don't do in the show normally. So let me bring him online.
Welcome to the Stroke of Genius Show, Survivor Experience. Now, here's your host, Aaron Avila.
Hey, good morning, John.
Hey, Aaron, how are you? It's good to see you. I apologize for my voice. I'm recovering from an illness, so my voice is a little strained this morning, but I'm going
Yeah,
to do my
no,
best.
you had COVID. I just saw it. I
Yeah,
just saw it.
yeah.
But John, I wanted to tell people a little bit about you first. Professor, I know you from C-Suite Network, met you. Jeff Hazel, C-Suite Network. But you're also CEO and founder of a summit movement called Senior Care Movement, which you and I are doing a show Friday. So I encourage you out there, audience, definitely come and share our show Friday. It's Senior Care Moment and Movement, and it's going to be great. You're also a founder of Game Day Media, right? I mean, your podcast is, I mean, you're a celebrity out there, basically.
Yeah. I have, I've been real fortunate. I was a hospital administrator for about 28 years. I'm down in San Antonio, Texas, and had an opportunity to kind of take a turn and get into the podcasting world, and that's where you and I met through the C-Suite and C-Suite Network and Jeffrey Hazlett. And I produce a lot of podcasts for many different people in many different areas, including a lot in the healthcare space. And I think this whole conversation wouldn't be taking place if I hadn't gone through some of the things we talked about earlier with my dad. I think that really pointed me in a direction of healthcare and serving others and taking care of others the best way I can. And it's a real pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, that's you talked about service and how what you went through is you made you a servant, made you be a servant. Same thing happened to my son. My son went through the same thing you did, of being a son of a stroke survivor, and it made him have a different heart than most people. It really does. It gives you a different heart.
It really does. And, as we were talking off air a little bit, I got to spend a little bit of time with my dad before he had a stroke, but I was really young. I was 7, almost 8 years old. And so I didn't get to do a lot of the things that typical father sons do, especially down here in the South, and where you do a lot of hunting and fishing and but we did some baseball together and things like that. But a lot of my youth was spent uh, going to speech therapy with my dad, and going to the university had a really nice stroke research center, and so we went and spent time there, and I really learned a lot about stroke at a very young age. I learned about things like aphasia and how neurologically things just weren't the same. You know, my dad was a right-handed person. He lost entire movement of his right side, so he had to become a lefty. And I was actually born a lefty, so I was actually able to help him with that. And there were just a lot of things growing up that were very different. But that's the only childhood I know, so I really just had different experiences, but they were great experience nonetheless. And my dad and I were very close.
Well, my son was going through what you were doing. We talked before the show, but you only got 30 minutes together. But I paint the picture of your life before stroke. If you would paint this picture of it, what
Yeah.
it was like?
Yeah, so my dad was both of my parents were school teachers. My dad taught shop, and my mom was a second grade teacher. I have an older brother. We were very active in sports. My dad was a little league umpire as the Little League World Series is going on right now in Pennsylvania. My dad was actually actively involved in that as an umpire, and so we did family trips. We went to the Grand Canyon. We went to Arkansas. We went to, all over the place that we could. We were very middle class, stereotypical family, and didn't want for anything. And I grew up right near the railroad track, so that was always an adventure. And we had a very normal, very loving and caring family. And I think, after my dad's stroke, it, it actually, I would say, strengthened our relationship, strained it at times, but
Yeah.
strengthened it. And, but yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better childhood. Played outdoors all the time, and had lots of friends in the neighborhood. So it was very, Leave It to Beaver kind of upbringing, I guess.
Sounds very similar to me. I'm sure it's describing my family. So even on the railroad tracks when I was younger, but not now.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, there's a term I used. As fast as lightning strikes, I became stroke survivor. So all that I know what that time is like. Past lightning strike, your family became stroke survivors. He was a stroke survivor, you were the ripple effect.
Yeah.
My goal is write a book about called the ripple effect stroke because I don't think there's any attention brought to people like you as a son, on wives, spouses. So I'm planning writing a book called the
Yeah.
Ripple Effect Stroke. But can you remember? Tell me a little bit about what that time was like when that lightning struck. Can we sure what was it doing? You said you were 7 or 8. Describe that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a very, strange time for me. And I think ripple effect is a great term to use, because you don't even realize, you may be on the shore and you see those ripples come in and the boat is a mile out, and you don't feel those until later on. But some of the things I remember pretty vividly from an early age were right when my dad had his stroke. I remember it was a Sunday morning. He was sipping on Sprite because he wasn't feeling good. And then like an hour later, he was out on the floor, and the ambulance came. And we lived in a very rural community, so the hospital was actually 50 miles away. And so it's a long way. You didn't have a hospital down the street. And so we were left at the house. My mother went with him, and it was just my brother and I. And we did not know anything. We didn't know a thing. And over the course of probably the next month, I think back then he was in the hospital for a month. And I remember being shuffled around from family to family to stay with them for 2 nights here and then 2 nights there, because my mom was at the hospital the entire time. And then we would go up on the weekends and see dad. And, and again, for a young kid, seeing your dad, with being intubated and being, in ICU and all that, that's very, very uh, shocking for a young kid to see. But we saw him recover also, and then. But I do remember being shuffled around quite a bit from with different families that were helping my mom take care of us in those times, because it was just so uncertain, and it was not a something that you can really plan for with two young kids.
I mean, that I remember. I'm trying to get emotional because hearing you talk about that moment gets me emotional because my family had been through hell and back, honestly. And that's why I feel I have a big passion, my goal of running a book to bring awareness to the ripple effect of stroke. That, like you just described, you see the boat rock.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll say this about my mother, and she lives with us now. She's in her 80s, and she moved in with us maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and but I will tell you, she was a rock during that time, and I know she was emotional. I know she was scared. I know she was all the things that we would be, but she never did anything but take care of us and stay on the highway back and forth between the hospital that was an hour away. And so we never saw her waver, which I know she did in her private moments, I'm sure. But when you have a parent that's modeling such um, uh, positive behavior and just dealing with it as it comes, and doesn't appear, again, being in my mid 50s now versus being 7 or 8 then, you have those memories that are locked in your brain, but you also, as you get older, you realize that ripple effect didn't just affect us at the bottom as the kids, but it affect her work and her life, and just being tired all the time from driving back and forth and sleeping in those uncomfortable hospital chairs for days on end. So it was a very harrowing experience for her, I'm sure. But kids are pretty pliable and pretty malleable and bounce around pretty easily. And so we knew our dad was getting better, and then that we were getting fed, and that we had a place to sleep at night, and so the community kind of rallied around our church, especially rallied around our family during that time, and long after that as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a support system that makes. I'm gonna tell you, I don't know your dad. I didn't know him, but I do know it would mean the world to him, and it means the world to me to have your support system, your family by your side. I know many stroke survivors. You and I mentioned it in the green room that the spouse or family leaves them. They just, they do. It's sad. Now you did mention one thing I want to touch on. I want to bring awareness to. Your dad has aphasia.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
So yeah, so when he came home, he could say two words: yes and no, and
uh,
that was it. And half the time, no meant yes, and half the time, yes meant no. And so it was one of those things that we were, decoding what he was trying to say. And over time, we learned just by the tonation of his voice. When he said no, he really meant yes. And when he meant yes, sometimes he meant no. But we learn to adapt to that, and it's amazing how much you can adapt to things like that when you're dealing with it. And he obviously went through physical therapy because he really had to learn how to walk again, and he went through the speech therapy and the occupational therapy and all the things that were really kind of on the cutting edge back then in the late 70s. And but the speech was a challenge for all of us for a while, and there was frustration there,
oh, yeah,
and it was on both parts. It was on our part and it was on his part, because he knew exactly what he wanted to say, but he couldn't say it.
right.
And as I told you in the green room, when we went to church on Sundays, he could sing the hymns word for word with no issues. And then when it was back to conversation, it was yes and no. It's still strange to me how the brain works, and how that happens. And somebody said it's a little bit like people that stutter. If you remember Mel Tillis from back in the old days,
Oh yeah.
uh, he was a country singer, and he had a really bad stutter, but when he sang, he didn't stutter at all. And so it's just something in the brain that triggers those memories and triggers the ability to communicate that way. And we thought for a while we were just going to have him sing everything to us, but it didn't work that way. But that was one of the interesting parts, post stroke, that we learned to acknowledge and adapt to, and really master after just a couple of years. We really learned what he was thinking and what he was trying to say, even though he couldn't do it.
Yeah, face, John, I've been serving the Sir community now for about 9 years. And face you, when I first started, I used to get emotional and cry because to me, a face was one of the coolest things up, not just for the surgery, because like you said, your dad knew what he wanted to say, but say window, dad, he said door. You know, it,
Yeah.
it does, and but
Well, yeah, and he got to where he got so frustrated as we went through speech therapy, he would just point to his brain and say, "It's in here,"
yeah.
and then he would just point at his mouth and say, like, "No, I can't say it, but it's in here." So the frustration was, I know, for him, because he was like I said, he was a teacher. He worked with his hands. Later on in life, right before he had a stroke, he got out of teaching and became the county tax assessor. So he was out in the community, talking to landowners and things like that on a regular basis. A very social person, and so for a social person to basically have all the basic skills of being social just taken from him is, I know he suffered from depression and frustration with that fairly regularly, off and on, the rest of his life.
Yeah, that is probably something I want to bring to people's attention. Be patient. When you have someone that's had a stroke, has a patient, I know it doesn't seem like it, but the frustration they go through, because I witnessed it for serving the circumcision, the frustration, because your dad knew what he was like. He knew he could speak. He knew he could teach. All of a sudden, he can't. Man,
Yeah.
nothing more frustrating, more depressing than that, bro. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah, and what was really interesting is even after he had his stroke, and these were the days pre-computer, so he did everything on those large ledger sheets with the numbers, and he could still do all of that. He just couldn't speak, and he couldn't. I mean, he could add the numbers, he could use a calculator, he could do all the things, but he could not communicate what he needed or what he wanted effectively, until years later, and it was still very limited speaking.
Yeah, that inability to communicate is I have what they call dyslexia. I don't have aphasia. I sound like a drummer most time, sound like certain words. I personally think it's funny to keep me fun myself. I sound like Albert Fudd. But, you know, I'm just saying aphasia is one of the coolest things. One of the things, side effects are facts start gonna have. So, but you as a family, a unit, you as a son, your mom stepping up as a rock for the family. Did you have sisters or brothers or sisters?
I had an older brother, and he's 4 years older than me, and so he was there. He was in high school while I was, in the in the primary school ages, but we dealt with it a lot the same and a lot different. He stayed gone more, just because he had a car, and he had his social network. And so, I don't remember there being any issues there, but I do remember he was just doing his own thing as a high school student. But I will say this, that one of the ripple effects that you talked about was how family, or excuse me, how friends that have known you your entire life, how they started treating the family differently when my dad came home from the hospital, because it was almost like they were averse to seeing him differently than he was. And so I know some really close family relationships were either severed completely or were just they just kind of disappeared uh, during that time. And it was I had a hard time understanding that because my family had a really close network of friends that some stuck around and some didn't. And it was really eye opening. And to me, it kind of, even at a young age, I think I've been more intuitive because of that, because I saw, okay, people, when things get difficult, some people will stay and some people will run. And you kind of learn the character of people that run. And that's not to paint a broad brush. Some people were probably just scared of having to deal with that or having to learn something new. But it really, as you talked about being patient, I think it's so important, no matter what condition someone's in, to accept them for who they are, where they are in their journey. And because there are people that walk out on you, there are people that leave you, and it's heartbreaking sometimes because there's nothing you did wrong. And I know my family felt, I don't know if guilt's the right word, but they felt like they had been abandoned by certain people and certain families that were there during the good times, but bailed when things got tough.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad we're actually talking about the first time since I've been doing this in years. I've ever heard this. I spoke about it because oh man, we got a lot of people. I'm gonna pause for a second, and I got a lot of new people out there. So we got Kim. Well, yeah, Kim, I've never seen you, but thank you for being for the show. And you may know Nick Clark. He's part of the LinkedIn community, and he's in the United Kingdom, so he's out there watching. Thank you for being out, Nick. We appreciate it. But you people, John, I got to tell you, my friends, I don't have anymore. I have
Yeah.
one. I think out of all the friends I have, one step by my side.
Yeah.
And this one person stepped by my side since I was a kid. We've known each other since we were 10. His name is Gordon Dudler. And he stepped by my side and tolerated what I spoke. I think part of it is there's fears. We as church members, you look at us. Our friends look at us, go, "Oh man, that's not good. That could be me." And that fear of them realizing that could be them, that they're mortal, that things happen in life. I don't think like me around this. So all my friends left, most family left. The only people that stepped by my side were my wife, my son, and my mother-in-law. Those three pretty much still that really faithfully stepped by my side.
Yeah, it really does change family and friend dynamics for sure, and other things that were social. I mean, my dad was a big golfer as well, and after he had a stroke, he was unable to play golf anymore, and none of his golf friends um, came to see him
Uh,
very
yeah,
regularly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Somebody to pay a little between your dad and I are amazing because I was a golfer. I was a three handicap. Now I'm just handicap. I picked golf up I'd say when I lived in the golf course. I played almost 7 days a week, but when I moved to the city, I played seven. But it's decimating to lose all your abilities. I'm half a pet. I'm in the woodshop for 13 years. And, I want to say for anybody out there that just a hand on the shoulder, a hug, they'll say, "I love you, Dad. I
yeah.
love you, Mom," whoever makes all what you did for your father. And,
Yeah, and I'll say this too, because I don't want it to sound like that we didn't make the most of a bad situation, because we did, and we had lots of laughs in the house. And my dad continued to have a pretty wicked sense of humor, and my mother has a great sense of humor, and I try to have a sense of humor, and so there was a lot of laughs that made up for a lot of the pain and frustration that I know, especially my parents dealt with, and my dad especially, because of his condition. So, we still got to experience some really cool things. I drove my dad from Texas to Montana. We had watched the movie Lonesome Dove together with Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones, and we followed that path that they took, except in a car,
Oh, wow.
uh, all the way up to the Canadian border, and we got to experience some of the coolest stuff, and just the beauty of nature, and that's a real special trip that my mom and I still talk about pretty regularly, because we really did appreciate that, because that happened just right before he passed away, and it was a very special trip for all of us. So we made the most of it, and I think that everybody involved. Uh, I think someone in the chat said that um, that blessings can come from tragedies. And I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. That was Kim that said that. And it's absolutely true. I don't know what my life would have been like had my dad not had a stroke. I don't know what his life would have been like. He was an entrepreneur, and liked to try new things and do new things with he had a plan to grow a Christmas tree farm. And so we had all these plans, and sometimes we have to default those plans and create new plans. But I think we did the very best we could, and it was certainly a blessing to have him in my life for another 20 years after that. And he got to see my first son born, which he only saw him once, but he saw him at about 4 months old.
Wow.
Before he had his second stroke and passed away. But he did get to do that. And, that's one thing we say, is that, my wife and I's kids got, ripped off from not having a grandfather. So, because he would have been a lot of fun. And so those are the things we lament and kind of miss most of all, of what could have been, even, in the condition he was in. He was a hell of a funny guy, and made the most of it, and just miss those opportunities. And I feel bad for my kids because they didn't get to experience that.
That, the biggest takeaway I'm going to take out of our show together is mindset. The mindset of the spouse, mindset of the children, mindset of the family. You've got to set your mind right. You got to realize and love. I mean, there's one thing that covered all this is love, true love of the family. And I think it's amazing. But a child can well be. Now I don't mean to be ignoring you in the chat. I see there's a lot of comments going, and I apologize for not bringing those up. But let's take a second. Let's see what they're saying. Hold on. So, Kim says, beautiful that he saw your son. Oh, she loves that. And I appreciate all you out there. I'm not going to go through all the chats. Please, I'll start watching it. I've been so enthralled about this show. I think there's a point I said, think we need to raise right now in this show that the ripple effect of stroke. And like I said, I have a goal writing a book called The Ripple Effect of Stroke. In fact, if you go to Facebook right now and to Google The Ripple Effect of Stroke, you'll find it. I actually know everything, but someday. But John, if there's one piece of advice, because we're down the end of the show, unfortunately, there's one piece of advice you as a son could give to somebody out there that now is in the place of you were.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I would say that the love of a father for a child, and a mother for that matter, is unconditional, and sometimes that love back to them in their times of need and struggle, because we always see our parents as invincible and perfect and all of that, is just give that love back to them, and know that you're not going to bail on them, and that you know, come hell or high water, you're going to be there for them, because they've always been there for you, and that's, you know, that's the best thing I can say. And I've always just had the utmost respect and love for my family, and hopefully I was able, as a young kid, and more so now as an adult, as my mother lives with us now, am able to reciprocate that love, and be able to make their lives better and easier, and just as a quiet thank you for everything they've done for us.
Wow. Get emotional, but you know what, John? Thank you so much for coming here because honestly, the red fact we don't talk about it much out there in the surf community, but I guarantee everybody out there that watches the video now live or on the replay on YouTube, on True TV Media, has lost friends, have lost family. I saw comment in the chat saying my husband loved me. I know so many. So I'm just saying, be grateful. If y'all are a survivor, I don't care if you change your heart from. I'm gonna say something my mentor told me. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. So you as a survivor, I'm talking to you as a survivor. Focus on those things you're grateful for. Focus on the person and focus on that spouse or the friend or the family member that's there. And just say thank you. It's easy to take it for granted. But John, I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm really, really, really grateful you're here. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you as a friend. It's great to interact with your amazing community here, and I wish all of you the very best, peace and love. And Aaron is continuing to do that work, that yeoman's work, to help families, and I really do appreciate everything you do.
Well, I appreciate that, John. I'm looking forward, hoping that you real quick. John and I are also doing a show this Friday together. So I appreciate if you guys want to hear about another facet of John. He also CEO and founder of what is a senior.
Senior care movement, and it's all about people that are looking for a change in their careers and their lives to help the senior care community, because we've got 74 million people in the US alone that are going to be turning 70 in the next 10 years. And I know globally, I know you have some viewers in the UK and also in South Africa and other places, and it's a worldwide phenomenon. And, you know, that generation needs all of our help and support in continuing to live the best lives they can. And so, yeah, we're going to have a really good conversation about what that means. And I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, and let's get to you guys now. That's at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Stroke TV Media YouTube channel. So please come join John and I. And John, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Aaron. Thank you.
All right, have a good day, bro.